can go right to 3:30. That's fine. All right.
Hey, if you've watched any sort of sports, especially football, in the last 20 or so years, my guest has really influenced how you watch sports. He's been a great friend for 40 years. His name is Fred Gaudelli. He's the executive producer of Sunday Night Football. To his credits, he's only has, 23 Emmy Awards, 4 Hall of Fame. People are calling him up right now, as a matter of fact. He also has produced multiple Super Bowls. And I would actually call Fred a visionary because he was part of the team that put the NFL draft on. He's the guy who gave us Skycam, and he's the guy that to make us look to see if we got a first down with those the yellow marker technology. And Fred, so proud of what you've accomplished. Congratulations.
Well, Kaz, I don't know what to say about a lead in like that, but thanks a lot. And it's always great to be speaking to you.
So, 2 conversations we had. I want to see if you remember it the way I do. Number one, Fred and I did radio together at WCWP in college. Fred was an outstanding sportscaster. You had called me up and said, hey, I'm going to get into TV. And I thought, oh, this makes sense. Great looking guy. And then you said, no, I want to be behind the scenes. I think I tried to talk you out of it. Shows you how smart I am with your resume right now. And the other thing is, number 2, Fred came to my wedding and you said, hey, here's your gift. You handed me a card. And at that time, you were transitioning from radio to TV, looking for that first job. And I felt I didn't want to take it. You gave us a night in Manhattan, which we were grateful for. And I said, Fred, I really don't want it because you're unemployed. He goes, you said, no. He said, I've got something in the works. You're going to hear a lot about it. It's called ESPN. And that was actually your first job, was basically in the mailroom, right?
Correct. Yeah. I do remember your wedding very vividly. And yeah, my first job at ESPN was in the mailroom. I was working at a radio station in New Rochelle doing weekend sports at like 6 and 7 a.m. That was a good gig. And the owner of the station, his college roommate was one of the production chiefs at ESPN. He said, I'll set you up with an interview. I walked into this guy's office. I think I might have said 2 words. He goes, he sent me right to HR and they said, yeah, we have a job in the mailroom, but I was more than happy to take it.
So you get to ESPN. Did you actually think, at the bottom level, because you're probably my definitive Horatio Algier story, working your way up to success. Did you think the network was going to become what it is today?
No, I don't think anybody saw that coming. There were a lot of great people there, but it was tenuous. We were owned by Getty Oil. So it was an oil company trying to figure out what to do with a cable, sports network. Then Getty was bought out by Texaco. Texaco really wanted no part of a cable sports network. But then we were bought by Capital Cities, which owned a bunch of local stations across America and had 2 really brilliant owners, Tom Murphy and Dan Burke. And then they eventually bought the entire ABC network. And then they had this asset, ESPN, and that's when it got serious. That's when there was an infusion of cash. We had a change in management, and we got aggressive. We got the NFL rights in 1987 to put games on. We got the Major League Baseball rights in 1990. And that's when things really started to take off. But you can make the case that ESPN is the most successful story of the last, 50 years from a business standpoint. It churns out billions of dollars of profits per month. Their influence, obviously, in sports, really non-paralleled.
Without question. So you're in the mailroom. I think you worked your way up to an in-house producer at that time. Is that correct?
Well, not right to producer, but it was called like a logger. I would in those days, 1983. We don't have a lot of live events on. We have Sports Center and studio shows, but most of our sporting events are tape delayed. So UCLA plays a late game on Saturday night. It's airing in prime time on Sunday. On NBC and on NBC, on ESPN. And obviously we did the same thing with Notre Dame. But so I would have to log these games, figure out where the commercials went, and then you start with that. And then, you start working your way up, working for producers, doing things for them, building building a clip reel. So I worked for the boxing producer. You'd have like 3 fights the next week. I'd have to find highlights of all 6 fighters in those fights, make sure he had them ready to go. Started to dabble in, graphic production, producing graphics during a game. So you just kind of work your way up. I didn't really become a producer until 1987, so 5 years after I started.
Who are the mentors that got you to that first big stage in your career?
Well, I was really fortunate. My first boss, whose name is Bill Fitz, and he's going to turn 90 in October, and he's like the youngest 90-year-old person I've ever met. This is a true visionary, and this is the ultimate iconoclast. Like, there was nothing by the book. And he was one of those guys that basically said, hey, when you're getting ready for an event, you prepare all your notes, and when the event's over, take all those notes and throw them out. And because the next time you do it, you'll have to start fresh, and you'll think differently, and you'll think better, and you'll think bigger. So he was a guy that really had a tremendous influence. He was a little scary, so you're always a little afraid of him, but he was a wonderful man. I mean, he was like, the biggest heart of all. But he had a tremendous influence. The COO of the company was a guy named Scotty Connell. He had come from NBC Sports, where he kind of ran their hockey. He was very big in hockey. He had about 6 of his kids working there. But another just generous man with his time. Remember the first game I went to produce. First thing I went to produce, Bill Fitz came out with me, and then the second thing, Scotty Connell came out with me. And they were, those guys combined had probably done the first 15 or 20 Super Bowls. They had done Final Fours. They had done Masters. They had done every major sporting event that America had. And, I'm sure they're saying to themselves, they're in their late 50s, early 60s. We had all these kids. Like, what are we doing with these kids who are, just learning? And they could have easily mailed it in, but they didn't. And they really took it to heart to try to teach every single one of us, because at that point in production, the average age of the producers was high, it was like 28, maybe 27. And, it was a lot of young people, some of whom had not really fully grown up yet. And there was definitely a locker room type, atmosphere that went on, because everybody was a sports fanatic. Everybody was young. Mostly everybody was a male. And, so you can imagine what that was like, but, they were real professionals who had done the biggest events, and they were more than happy to be teachers and share what they know and kind of bring us all along. So early on, they were 2 of them. Announcer wise, Jim Simpson, was a stately, broadcaster that at NBC Sports. He had done World Series. He had done Super Bowls. He had done all those things. He comes over and, he got paid a lot, but again, he's working with a bunch of kids, and he could not have been more understanding. He could not have been more generous. And he was always willing to give you his advice if you asked him for it.
Let's talk about ESPN putting the NFL draft on. That had to be a game changer as far as what the draft was. You read it in the paper, to what it is today, this big party and celebration. Was that also a type of thing like, okay, this is going to be on, but you probably didn't have an idea of how giant it was going to be?
No, there's no way. I mean, again, when we started, we came on the air Tuesday mornings at 8 a.m. And 2 minutes later, there was Roselle with the first pick. So there wasn't any big buildup. There wasn't any of that. We were in a basement ballroom on the Sheridan on 7th Avenue, right near 59th Street. There might have been 100 draftniks up in the plaza level gallery. And, it was kind of sleepy. I mean, it was very sleepy. And that's the way it was right about until, I'm going to say, like 1989, 1990. Like when Jerry Jones came into the league, like he turned the draft into something a little bit different. All the trades he was making, having people at Draft Picks house saying, I'm going to draft you right now if you'll sign this contract. And if you're not, I'm drafting the other guy because I got another guy at his house. So that kind of all the wheeling and dealing really started or got a lot more aggressive, when Jerry came in. And then, we kind of moved. We moved from a ballroom. We went to Radio City Music Hall, which was a big step. And then from Radio Music, we were at Madison Square Garden. And then one year, Radio City Music Hall had given the space out, even though they knew the draft when it came, and the NFL was forced to go elsewhere. And they went to Chicago, and the NFL may never come back to New York City because, now you have cities bidding large amounts of money, to host the draft because it's a great 3-day event. And what we saw in Cleveland, just a few months ago, it just gets bigger every city you go to. And next year it's Vegas. We can only imagine.
Wow, that's true.
Yeah.
That'll probably be the biggest party of all time.
Yeah.
So one of the big moves you had with ESPN, you took over Sunday Night Football when you mentioned earlier ESPN got the rights.
Mhm.
Take the fan through your week leading up to a game, all the preparation that we probably don't see or understand. It's mind blowing.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I tell people a normal week during the season for me is about 110 hours. That's my work week, and there really isn't a day off. I mean, you come home on Monday, but Monday I'll try to watch the game we had just done, or start some early prep and start making some phone calls and like reading statistics and things of that nature. And then Tuesday, I try to watch the last game, the television tape of each team in my game this week. And I'm talking to each team, trying to set up meetings. Wednesday is my staff meeting where we spend an hour reviewing the game we had just done. Then we spend the next 90 minutes brainstorming ideas for the game we're about to do. Thursday, I usually meet with Michelle Tafoya and her producer. We'll review her hits from the prior week, and then we'll put together a plan for the coming game. Like, here's, who we should be talking to. Here's a couple of thoughts for what you'll do in the open. And then Michelle will, go on her way and start tackling those assignments. And then I travel to the game site Thursday night, so wherever the game is. And then Friday, we're at the home team practice. After practice, we'll meet with the head coach, the quarterback, and 2 other players. Then we'll go back to our hotel, and I'll take the replay team, and we'll watch coaches' tape of the last game just to kind of find out formations, personnel groupings, who's playing well, who's playing not, who's playing hurt. And then Saturday morning, we do that for the visiting team. And then we'll go to the visiting team's hotel once they get in, meet with the head coach, the quarterback, 2 other players. And then Sunday morning, Al, Chris, myself, Michelle, my director, Drew Esikoff, a couple other people, we'll have like an editorial meeting where we'll discuss how we're going to cover certain topics tonight. And then we'll talk about what we're going to talk about in the open. And then I bring the entire production team in, and we look at all the graphics and interstitial pieces of tape that could make the broadcast, but 95% won't, just so we can all be familiar with what we're going to see. And then we go out to the truck like around 2:00 for a 8:30 game. And we do like a 2-hour rehearsal where we rehearse all the different elements. And then have a little bite to eat. Do a camera meeting where we explain to the camera and replay crew, hey, how we think this game is going to be played. When this thing happens, make sure we can see this. Make sure they understand their shots and their framings. Then Al, Chris, and Michelle show up and, just kind of check in with them. And then once players come out for warm-ups, we're locked in. We're always shooting warm-ups because you can usually find something worthwhile during warm-ups, and the game begins. And then game ends and we start that cycle all over again.
I gotta be honest, I'm tired.
It's a long week. It's a lot of fun, but it's a long week.
Yeah. How many people with NBC Sunday Night Football, how many people together, give me a number, work that game to bring it what it is today?
Well, pre-pandemic, it was 200. After the pandemic, last year we were at 150. We'll probably be at like 175 this year, but it's a nation. It takes a lot of people to put that thing on.
Speaking of putting things on, you gave us just one of many different things to watch the game better. And let's focus on the line for the first down. How did that idea germinate and start to become what it is today?
So there was a group of scientists, and that's really what they were, who had teamed up with some TV technical people, and they came to ESPN and they say, look, we have the ability to draw a virtual line on the field. Where obviously the TV audience will see it. Nobody in the stadium will. And they put a tape on, and I looked at the tape, and I'll be honest with you, I was not convinced looking at the tape. I wasn't convinced it would work. I just wasn't convinced it was needed. So I wasn't really sure about it. My boss said, look, I think it's worth a shot, but your call. If you don't, then there's no sense in doing it. But I said, no, we should give it a shot. And then once we got to our first preseason game, we were doing what's known as an offline test. So we set up a separate truck. It wasn't going anywhere, but it was recording the cameras with the yellow line. And after the game, walked into that truck and saw it. I'm like, yeah, people are going to love this. This is a home run. It took us about 6 games, including preseason, to get it where it was stable enough and reliable enough to work. And then I think we brought it out maybe for the 4th game of the regular season. I think it was back in 1997. So, yeah, I mean, I never even thought this was possible, but these scientists had figured out a way to extract data from a camera's lens. And they had these special mounts where the camera would go on that would take that data out of the lens into a computer, and the computer would know precisely where this was on the field, and they'd set 2 points and draw a line. And, that right there, was really set the table for so many other innovations. So all virtual technology comes from that yellow line. I know there's not universal agreement on the strike zone box. I personally like the strike zone box, but without the yellow line, there isn't a strike zone box, and there isn't anything else that's virtually done in sports anymore. So, but those were, really brilliant scientists who developed that.
Absolutely. I know we're tight on time, so I'm going to give you a couple of quick questions. Is there one sporting event or type of sport that you'd love to work, but you haven't had the opportunity yet?
That's a good question. I guess, I'm a big basketball fan. I guess I would say, the NBA finals would be something, but that's not going to happen because I don't have too many years left doing this, Kaz. But I guess the Masters would be up there.
Okay.
To say, hey, you did the Masters. That would be great.
So when we were kids, there'd be the office pool as far as doing some bets for football. Did you ever think the sports gambling would become as big as it is today?
You talk about the most taboo topic for any professional sports league was gambling.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't touch it with a 30-foot pole. If even, like, for instance, as I'm sure you're aware, at the end of a blowout, Al Michaels will always throw in a reference to the under/over, or the cover.
Right.
He'll always do it. If the game's out of hand and it doesn't matter, and somebody kicks a field goal, and that makes it, and that one really makes it over. So he'll always do that. I would get calls Monday morning, hey, we should not be talking about gambling. Why is he referencing gambling? That's how maniacal they were about not having gambling in sports. And it wasn't just the NFL, it was every other professional league as well. And it's really, it's kind of, the fact that we have a team in Vegas, not only one team, we've got a hockey team, we've got a football team. There will be a Super Bowl in Vegas, write it down. There's no question about that. It's kind of a mind blower that we can go from the most taboo thing of all the way to, yeah, it's acceptable, let's do it. But we know the reason. The reason is that's an untapped revenue pool.
If you can pick one game in your lifetime in the past, nothing you've done now, but going back, one game you'd love to be there, produce, what would it be?
Oh, that I didn't produce.
Correct.
That is a great one.
I'm more than a pretty face.
It would definitely be Yankees related. It would definitely be Yankees related. One game. Man, that's a great question. Uh, there was they didn't win that series against the Arizona Diamondbacks,
Right.
but that game that went to extra innings, I think Brocious homered with like 2 out in the ninth to put it into extra innings against the I think his name was Byung-Young Kim.
Right.
And then
Submarine
Jeter's
game.
homer on November. So Jeter homers on November 1st,
Okay.
and the Yankees now have won 3 straight games at home and go to Arizona looking like they're going to win, another World Series, which
Yeah.
obviously they did. And I'd say that game would be one game I would have loved to have done.
That would be a classic. Listen,
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for your time, number one, and we're just so proud of you. When I tell, and my wife, actually, I'll give Deb all the credit in the world for this. When we talk to friends and get introduced and tell you about your basement to success story, my wife has the best saying, Fred's up here, but he's still the guy we hung out with college. I mean, it just, I think that's the best compliment, somebody can give you.
Yeah. Hey,
And-
Kaz, you know how this works, man. You got it. I mean, look, everybody works hard. We all work hard. You have to get lucky, and you can never really. We also know life turns on a dime, right?
Yeah.
So whatever you're having today doesn't mean you're going to have it tomorrow. So I always try to keep that perspective on it. And there's so many people. I mean, I loved my 4 years in college, man. I met so many great people. You, Deb, Dan Regan. I mean, just so many guys that really helped me and influenced me. So it's always a pleasure to hook up. We have a game in Minneapolis this year.
Okay.
I'm guessing we're having fans, so I hope I'll see you at the game.
Good. Hey, man, thanks again for your time and keep up the great work. So proud of you.
Thanks, guys. Great
Thanks.
to see you. Thank you. All right, man.
That was awesome. I know you're on a tight schedule. How's your daughter doing?
Good. She's gonna be a freshman at Syracuse this year. So she's all excited about that.
Yeah.
How's Danny doing? I haven't talked to him in a while.
We talk a lot because he's writing a book.
Oh yeah, no, I know that book. What, the book's coming